And a good Thursday morning, Birds fans. 2 hours going to fly by today. Just a pre-show prediction from your buddy Jody Mack here. We have a lot to parse out, a lot to digest from yesterday's Eagles confab with Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni. You got Jody McDonald and John McMullen here with you on Birds 365. We got two good guests coming your way. For the second day in the show, I'm going to relate to one of our streamers who jumped in before the show ever started to comment on the show. Always love when someone comments on the show before it actually starts. From BRRR, R.I.P. Jody. Guess what? I'm not dead, and I'm not dying, and I'm not going anywhere, at least not for the next 2 hours. So feel free to.
What does that even mean? What does that even mean?
See, that's why I'm repeating myself from yesterday. That's one of the reasons why we don't comment on the stream as often as we do, because you don't know what people mean. It's typed out on a screen.
I got a real zeal. Is today the day that McMullen takes an L for as Brian Johnson takes? What am I taking an L for?
I don't know. That's why we don't comment on them as much as they do. But RIP is pretty easy to figure out. Dead man. We might at some point today reference the Philadelphia Eagles as a dead team walking, but I'm not dead. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not sure what he wants. Yesterday was enlightening, but it was also tremendously frustrating because one news service, I don't remember what it was, that's tagline used to be questions asked and answers questioned. We got a little bit of both yesterday. There were some questions that were asked and answered, and others that were completely ignored and or talked around in circles. Let me let you take it where you want to go. What was your number one takeaway? Excuse me, I'm already sick. Maybe BRR knows something. Maybe I am dying. What was your number one takeaway from yesterday's Eagles press session?
My number one takeaway, Nick Sirianni and his offense, which is my offense turned into our offense. It's one word, and it spoke volumes because, did he have an epiphany? I guess it's possible, but if I put a percentage on that, I would say well less than 10%. That to me was a non-confirmation of confirmation that Jeffrey Lurie said, hey, you got to change this, or we know what the result would be.
We'll change you, right?
He agreed to do it. And, it is what it is, but it ain't going to work. That's my early assessment. And Tim McManus, if you're an Office Space fan, if you've seen the movie Office Space, where the consultants come in and they're downsizing the office, and they ask one of the employees, what is it that you do here? That's the feeling I got when Tim asked him, so what do you do? And Nick's like a retired guy. He said, well, maybe I'll sit in some of the defensive meetings. He's like perusing it. I'm like, what is going on here? Jeffrey Lurie's a great owner. I'm not coming off that. You and I were talking, we got a little late because we're talking before we got on the air. When you compare him to the rest of the league, really good, really good. So, that's all that matters ultimately, how you grade somebody against your peers. He's a really good owner. But, man, he's got a blind spot when it comes to coaching. He really does. He thinks he knows. Yeah, look, you don't know. Stop it. Stop it. If you're going to hire a guy, hire him to do the job. If you don't think he's doing a good job, fire him and hire somebody else you think will do a good job. But don't go this halfway nonsense. And that's what he's doing. And you're going to have a co-head coach of the offense and a co-head coach of the defense and a guy. You got Jason Garrett without the clapping when Jerry Jones took all his power away down in Dallas. That's what you have. That's what you have.
And here's where I came off, because you're right. That's probably the number one takeaway. But the thing that struck me most, because, hey, we've been doing this for weeks. The collapse started, the collapse continued, the collapse worsened, the collapse completely collapsed in the final game, the playoff loss to Tampa. And we all have been speculating ever since Could the 7-game unbelievable collapse / rut the Eagles were in outweigh the first 2.5 years of Nick Sirianni's tenure? Because the first 2.5 years pretty damn good. Take over a team, albeit, yes, a little injured, that won 4 games the year before, get them above 500, get them into a playoff game. Yeah, they got dominated in the playoff game, but nobody was believing they were going to make the playoffs anyway. To year 2 in the Super Bowl, tied with 10 seconds to go. In year 3, 10-1 and 2 games better than anybody else in the National Football League. Not tied at 10-1, not a game ahead at 10-1. They had 1 loss when everybody else in the league had at least 3. And then comes the collapse. So Howie kind of talked about this, trying to do some math. That's 4 times as many up until that point. And then,
Yeah. Well, it's a bad look, yeah, to fire somebody with that winning percentage. And I think that's where the Eagles came down to it at the end of so they took away all his power, but kept the coach because he has a good record, basically. And I got people now. McMullen likes CEO coaches. Now, this isn't a CEO coach. I love CEO coaches. Come on. I mean, use your head. There's 2 of them in the championship games this weekend. John Harbaugh, Dan Campbell. They have power. That's the difference. They have power to do what they want to do. Then I'd love a CEO coach, and you can toggle to wherever there's a problem, and you can make a decision and fix it. Does anybody think that's what's going on here with Nick Sirianni?
Here's the reason why I have trouble believing that, John. They sold it, yes. They sold me. And without knowing, and none of us really know, we weren't behind closed doors. So we're all speculating in part. It could be based on knowledge of the people involved, but nobody was sitting in the meetings that they had when they decided Sean Desai needed to be stripped of his defensive play calling responsibilities. I first took Nick at his word, but then we find out Nick is a blatant liar because he says we're not making any changes. They tell the players on a Tuesday. They make sure Desai go up and talk to you guys as if he's the defensive coordinator. And then before the end of the week, they say, well, Matt Patricia will be calling plays from here on in. So we know he just blatantly lied to you, me, every other Eagle fan out there. So it certainly puts a question in the trust that you should have from Nick Sirianni, from him telling you the truth. I came to the point of believing it was dictated to him, that it wasn't his call, but he, being the malleable guy that he is, said, okay, you want to put it all on my shoulders, I'll take all the bullets. Well, they sure as hell sold that yesterday. I was going to see if there were any cracks in the armor for that story. Nick Sirianni, look, and you were there. Nick Sirianni looked right in the camera, looked right in everybody's eyes and said, that was my call. I went to Jeffrey and Howie, and they allowed me to make the move. I did it in the best interest of the football team. No, you did it on a whim? Well, of course you did it on the best interest of the football team. And then Howie took over and said, it's my job. When he came to us, when he wanted to change play calling with James Steichen, I'm going to give him all the tools. They sold that, John. And if that's the truth, if Nick Sirianni was at the heart of all of that and it was all his call, that's a fireable offense. You get the results that they got worse under Patricia against lesser opponents. You have to be fired when something like that happens. How do they keep him if that's the case?
Well, and I would say it's not about last season, right? It's about right now. But yes, I said people that want Nick Sirianni fired, I've said that pretty consistently. You should start with the Sean Desai decision, not the offense. I've said that consistently. That was a disaster of a decision. But when it comes to the power structure, it's different now than it was when he made that decision. And he's had more power stripped from him. And I know I can't impart this to people because they're not there. I can't tell you how emphatic, I can't even come up with a word, how emphatic Nick Sirianni was many times, not once, not in front of microphones, behind the microphones, since he's gotten here. This is my offense. It doesn't matter if it's Shane Steichen, Brian Johnson. At one point, he said Howie Roseman, Dom DiSandro, and he brought up everybody, Jeffrey Lurie, Julian Lurie, no matter who it is, as long as I am here, this is my offense. That changed.
Yeah.
That changed yesterday. And he didn't have an epiphany. He didn't have an epiphany. He was ordered. And forget about Howie. That's Jeffrey. That's the problem. And that's where I think it's going to stem from. First of all, you can say, since they got here, Jody, just little things. Every time they're together on the dais, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni, it's jokes and smiles and giggles like little school children. Yesterday, all business, nothing. It looked like a hostage video. If I wasn't there, I would have thought somebody was there with a gun telling Nick to read this. They took away his offense. Now, he makes $7 million a year. That's a nice gig to sit and retire and say, hey, maybe I'll sit in a defensive meeting. All right. But yeah, if you're going this far, and I'm speaking directly to Jeffrey Lurie, who was a great owner overall, but this is his blind spot. Show the courage of your convictions. Go in a different direction. That's what you're going to do it next year anyway. You might as well get it started, because this is the worst thing you can do. Straddle the fence and try to say, well, he had a great record and I don't want this reputation of overreaching. That's basically what it comes down to. Because as you mentioned, when you compare it to the rest of the league, this is a you-know-what show. But compared to the rest of the league, which struggles and can't find ways to win, the Eagles are pretty damn good. And they say, well, how many coaches do we have in our history with a 667 winning percentage, can make the playoffs 3 consecutive years? And I'm going to fire this guy. I'm going to look bad. Putting lipstick on a pig, Jody.
Yeah. After yesterday, I think it actually looks worse by keeping the guy. What you did to the guy, what you've asked the guy to do. And again, I'm going to give Nick Sirianni, maybe should get an Oscar, because I had to believe him when he said yesterday that was my decision to fire, demote, call it what you want, but take all the power away from Sean Desai. And that's exactly what Jeff Lurie did to him. If it wasn't Nick and it was all his doing, to me,
yeah, and I'm not blaming that one on Jeffrey. I'm blaming that one on Nick. But yesterday, now, because things have changed, obviously, with Nick, now he's gotten power taken away. And he's going to have to fire a bunch of assistant coaches that he doesn't want to fire. That's another thing. He didn't want to fire Brian Johnson. He's going to have to fire, but he's very loyal to his assistants. Same thing as Doug Peterson.
If we believe he did what he did to Sean Desai, where's the loyalty in that?
Yeah, I mean, look. It was a mistake. It was a big mistake. He's not as close to Sean as other guys. Obviously, you've been here for 3 years. That factors into it as well. He was trying to make a decision, made a bad decision, but that doesn't mean he's not loyal, especially to the offensive guys, less so to the defensive guys for obvious reasons. And a bunch of them are new, and he hasn't had a deep seated relationship as he once had with Gannon. So it's a little bit different. But when you start rooting out guys on the offensive side, and I said, the name to keep an eye on was Kevin Patullo. It's pretty clear Kevin's going to be here. So he's not going to have to fire him. But whether it's Alex Tanney or Aaron Moorhead's not a Nick Sirianni guy, but he's grown to be around him for 3 years. And he is loyal to those guys, similar to Doug was with his guys, mainly offensive guys as well. He's a coach's coach from what everyone says and what I've seen. He does not want to fire guys. Do you have to fire guys occasionally? Yes, it's part of the industry. I mean, he knows it. He's been fired. It's a nomadic industry. That's baked in. Everybody's got a shelf life. You're renting space, as Brandon Graham says. But, yeah, I mean, boy, Jeffrey's Jeffrey's like a WIP caller with extra zeros at the end of his bank account.
That's
He's
a
so
good place to be, man. That's a good place to be.
he's so emotional when they don't reach the expectations he sets for them. And by the way, his expectations were wrong.
Yeah, but he's emotional to a point, but then he doesn't follow through because, again, now this is just my opinion, and I don't have those zeros that Jeff has, nor do you, Johnny Mac, nor does Scotty Grayson from Fox 29, who's going to join us coming up in just a couple of minutes. He didn't fire Nick. If he was completely ruled by his emotions, you would let a collapse of 7 games completely outweigh 2.5 years of results. And he didn't. He's
He's
trying
also
to find that middle ground, Johnny Mac.
He is, yeah. Well, he's trying to straddle the fence. He is
Yep.
a very, very smart man. So he's not, when I say he's emotional about the football, but he's also very smart. So, and as you mentioned, he doesn't want to be seen to his peers. His peers will look at him like, you got a coach at 667, a coach that wins a Super Bowl, and you're firing him. Ooh, so he'll hear that at the owners meeting. They'll be like, I wish I could have that. And Jeffrey knows that part of it. But yeah, and it's interesting because look, it's his team. I always say he can do whatever he wants. And he should have a big impact on the head coaching hire. A head coaching hire is about organizational skills. It's about leading people. It's ironic. As you go down the flow chart of the coaching staff, it becomes more technical. It becomes more of, well, who's going to help a offensive lineman like Stoutland become a better player? Who's the good teacher? Who can teach technique and fundamentals and a scheme and an offensive scheme? He doesn't have the expertise to do that, but damn, he thinks he does. He thinks he does.
The owner basically hires 2 guys, his general manager and his coach. That's it. And then after that, the tree just starts to spread out, and you have to have faith that the guys you hire are going to hire the right guys. And those hires, with the people under them, are going to hire the right people and put them in place.
That's what it should be. That's what it should be. But too often in Philadelphia, when expectations aren't met, people have to pay. And there has to be blame assigned. And it might be at the coordinator level, or already has been. It's going to be both this year. It's going to be coordinator level, and you're going to see a bunch of assistants fired as well. Now, part of that is you're bringing in new coordinators. They want their own guys anyway. Sure. But sometimes it's just positional coach level, and he has no expertise on that. None. Zero. Other than being around the game for 30 years, which is meaningful. That's like me. I've been around the game for 30 years. Guess what, Jody? I don't have enough hubris to tell you that I can pick a positional coach in the NFL in a consistent basis.
Yeah.
You got to be smart enough. If you're a true smart guy, you know what you don't know, and you hire somebody who's an expert at that particular subject.
All those zeros does add to your level of expertise, or at least that does so in your own mind. All right, we've got level of expertise joining us next. Suns to zeros. From Fox 29, their sports director, Scotty Grayson, going to jump in with us here on Birds 365.